Hello, welcome to our video about the NIRA. NIRA stands for National Industrial Recovery Act. It was touted by President Franklin D. Roosevelt as the most important and far-reaching act ever enacted by American Congress. It was created by Roosevelt shortly after he became president in an attempt to stimulate economic growth and passed by Congress shortly after. The NIRA could be described as an unusual experiment in U.S. history. In the most simple sense, the act regulated industry and raised prices after severe deflation in order to stimulate economic recovery. It ended up being in place from 1933 until 1935, when it was deemed unconstitutional.
The NRA, or National Recovery Administration, was an organization put in place to regulate the act and promote compliance. The NRA wrote industrial codes for companies to adopt regarding hours of work, wages, and prices of products. This was a fairly successful process, as 500 of these codes were adopted by companies nationwide. Regardless of its success, it was an unprecedented regulation, and eventually it was ruled unconstitutional, which we will talk about in a bit.
These industry-wide codes of fair competition that effectively fixed wages and prices, established production quotas, and placed restrictions on the entry of other companies into the alliances. These regulations were put in place in order to try and plan the entire economy to promote stable growth and prevent another depression.
For this to happen, antitrust laws were suspended. Antitrust laws are laws which are in place in order to foster economic competition and protect the consumers from anti-competitive mergers and business practices. These laws were in place in order to prevent large companies from taking advantage of the people who are buying their products. However, in suspending these laws, Roosevelt worked to fix prices and production so that the economy could stabilize and begin to recover. While the idea of restricting free market principles may seem to go against American beliefs, it was necessary at the time to temporarily stabilize the economy. At the time, it was the free market principles which actually caused the market crash in the first place.
Another important result of the NIRA was a new right of workers to form and participate in unions. Prior to this act, the courts had upheld the rights of employers to go to great lengths in order to prevent the formation of unions. Companies could fire workers for joining unions, force them to sign a pledge not to join union as a condition of employment, require them to belong to company unions, and spy on them to stop unionism before it got started. The workers had the right to join both a union and abstain from joining a union. The choice belonged entirely to the worker instead of the employer.
As well as suspending the antitrust laws, Roosevelt also changed the labor policy with the NIRA. Roosevelt felt that increasing hourly wages could help reverse the Depression. He also employed work sharing, which means that he would make individuals work shorter weeks in order to provide more people with employment. AnalysisOnline.org estimates that the reduction in the standard work week from around 45 hours to 30 to 35 hours created nearly 2.5 million private sector jobs in the late summer and early fall of 1933. This would have represented an astounding 22% decline in economy-wide unemployment in just 4 months, making this one of the most effective reemployment policies in the nation's history. However, he also acknowledges that increases in hourly wage rates offset nearly half of these potential new jobs during the first 4 months. Regardless, these policies created jobs and reduced the astoundingly high unemployment rates.
However, as I mentioned before, the NIRA was declared unconstitutional in May 1935 when the Supreme Court issued its unanimous decision in the case Schechter Poultry Corp. Versus United States. The court ruled that the NIRA assigned lawmakers powers to the NRA in violation of the Constitution, allocation of such powers to Congress. Many of the labor provisions in the NIRA, however, were reenacted in later legislation.
Thank you for learning about the NRA with us. Click here if you would like to learn about social, political.
Click here if you want to go to economic or the arts.
Is it?